Welcome to Commander Central, episode 183, and today we'll be taking a look at listener Jordan Riez's Ghired Conclave Elite list. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Max and Chris, welcome back to 3/4 of the best pod in Commander.
I'm still part of this group.
Yes, you are. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Wonderful.
Max, I think you had a few more stories. We knew we had a full show on Monday, so we didn't talk too much about your trip to Austin.
Yeah.
Aside from the awesome food you had to eat. I heard there was a few interesting game stories that went on down there.
Quite a few. First off, I got to meet the mythical Big John from
Nice.
Commander Social. He exists.
So who all was there?
Okay, so it was myself,
Okay.
Dan Kraus, Joe Hoffman, who we've met through Magic Fest.
Yep.
Zach and Ryan from Commander Social. And then Tim Rayburn, a listener of ours and one of their patrons, drove over from Dallas for the weekend.
Nice.
Then Big John came in and out as the weekend went on, and we also met Mike Condon, their audio guy.
Nice. So you guys had like 2 or 3 pods going most of the time.
Yeah, there's always, I played a handful of 6-player games, a handful of 5-player games, and then a bunch of 4 or 3-player games too. Yeah, it was a lot of games.
Did you guys do anything weird like, Secret Commander?
We did Secret Partners,
Okay.
and I screwed that up. So, add that to the list of something I can't do.
Plane Chase. I heard there was a good plane chase story.
Yeah, so we were playing a plane chase game. I was in the 3-player pod for it. And on the first plane we got was Hedron Fields of Agadeem.
Okay.
So the static on that plane is creatures with power 7 or greater can't attack or block. And then the chaos roll is whenever you roll chaos, create a 7/7 colorless Eldrazi creature token with Annihilator 1.
Okay.
I was playing Tuvasa because I'm like, okay, it's a quick game. Let's play something fast. Turn 1, I play a land. I roll the die because I'm like, we got to get off of this thing. This isn't going to be good for anybody. And I got the chaos, so I create my Annihilator token. So I'm like, I'll spend the 1 mana to re-roll for free, and I got us moved off the plane right away.
So you started the game.
I literally won the game with that token.
Sure, because then everyone starts losing lands
Because
for the most part.
I think I found some enchantment that just gave it hexproof. So I just slapped that on it, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go to town with this and never bring Tuvasa out.
So you're a 7/7 Annihilator Eldrazi did the trick.
Yeah.
That's, you are a monster.
I am. And shout out to Joe. He brought these tiny little plastic crowns.
I saw those.
And so whenever you won a pod, he limited it to like 3 for everybody, but
Sure.
whenever you won a game, you got a crown.
Nice.
So he's going to try to do something like that for every Magic Fest he goes to this year.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. Looked like it was a really good time.
Yep. It was a great little house we rented, and I think we're just
Nice.
going to try to book it every year, actually.
Awesome. A nice little spring break for Commander players, basically.
I got to wear shorts every day of the week.
And it was cold here, too. You did.
That's an understatement. It was really
you picked
cold.
the right weekend to leave town.
I believe my dad said when he dropped me off at the airport, you can just invite them all up here next time next year, and see how they all like it. I'm like, yeah, they're not. The guy from California definitely won't want to come here.
No one's going to want to do that. It was cold for Dan when he was here in November, and it was.
And we're all in like t-shirts.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah,
I do remember that.
I would not want to do that to somebody I liked, make them come to Wisconsin in February. That sounds pretty miserable. Well, cool. Glad to hear that. I don't think we have anything else exciting to talk about, really. We have a few contests here that are still ongoing.
Yeah, so our March contest kicked off a little early this here in February. For Patreon, if you support us or continue to support us by the end of March, you're going to win that Alayla Artful Provocateur deck donated to the show by patron Zach D.
Yes.
And then on Twitter, we're giving away that full art Altar of Marath, Will of the Wild, done by a local friend of the show, Ben Johnston.
Very cool. Well, if you wanted to find us, to reach out to say hi or tell us about what's going on in your neck of the woods or any new decks you've made, how would you do that, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, CMDR Central searching, and you can find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
You can also find us at flipsidegaming.com.
Yeah, use promo code CMDR in all caps to get 10% off all orders, $10 or more.
Excellent. Any final news from anybody? Did anybody wind up buying a secret lair?
I did not.
Okay.
I really toyed with it when I was in Austin because that was when I was
that's when
down
you
there.
were down there.
We were all just sitting there all weekend like, we got till Sunday. And I think a couple of the guys bought one or the full sets, but I just was like, I don't run any of the gods
Sure.
really as commanders. because I don't run Afara in Brago anymore. I run a couple of the new Theros got from this most recent set, but those weren't included in these.
Right. How about you, Chris? I'm assuming you didn't pick one up. I did. I bought one, and I wasn't actually going to. I wanted the Nylea for my Glissa deck,
Okay.
but I wasn't going to order it. I'm like, I'll just buy the single and save $10 later on or something. But it just so happened to be the one that has Farika in it.
Oh.
And I have ran Farika and Glissa before, and I do kind of like the cards. So I'm like, okay. And the third one is Xenagos in that same pack. Like, Xenagos is just a really good card in general. And I'm like, okay, well, there's enough value then to, like, had it been two different Planeswalkers, probably wouldn't have done it. But it's because it's two that, like, one other one I might use and one that's just a good card in general. Like, all right, well, so I bought that one. I bought the Nylea one. But that was the only one I picked up. So that was it for me. And I think that's about nothing else exciting is going on. So
Nope.
we're kind of in the lull between.
Theros and Commander/Ikoria.
Yeah. So not much longer. We should appreciate the quiet while we actually have it, because it's going to get bonkers here in about 4 weeks. Let's take a look at Jordan's Ghired deck. Ghired. I think it's Ghired. I'm pronouncing it Ghired.
Sure.
He can get mad at me. Ghired can get mad at me.
The internet can get mad at you.
Right. We got a few notes here from Jordan before we start. Quick prelude. This deck is in its baby stages and has evolved from something completely different. It originated, believe it or not, from a cat tribal precon, so that would have been the Arabo deck back in the day. He didn't like the playstyle of the original commander, so it switched it to Nazan Voltron, and in doing so put in cats like Bermaz and Leon War Leader that swings and makes more cats because he likes tokens. The deck was built around equipment, so he said, hey, there's some more equipment to do stuff, so he just kind of turned that into an army in the can idea. And after some development and tuning, Ghired came out, and it was the perfect commander for the deck he already had. Plus, it's a cat, so I guess that kind of matches what he was doing as well. The deck's in a premature state now because it's kind of evolved in that direction, so he would like a little bit of help with it.
So, of course, we always ask, what is their meta like? And Jordan says he has two metas. One is a filthy casual circle that often plays 4 to 6 player games and range from tribal elf aggro to Edric semi-competitive to Grenzo combo goodness to Leviathan bounce tribal. The second group consists of 2 to 4 other players and is more cutthroat with decks like Urza Stacks, Tristani Populate, Thrasios and Timna Good Stuff, and Rurikthar Stacks as well. This deck is more for the casual group, but he would like to get to the point where it could at least attempt to play with at the big kids table. The goal of the deck is to swing as much as possible using cards like Reconnaissance, Gideon, and Heroic Intervention to keep the token generators alive, generating an army until my opponents can't block, or I draw into the cards that stop my opponents from blocking in general.
So let's talk about weaknesses or areas that should focus on with the deck. Since this is just a baby deck, hasn't had a chance to playtest it much, but feels that it's lacking card draw and might need to cut down on cards such as Parhelion 2. He says he took out doubling season effects because he felt he was spending too much time setting up when he could have just been swinging. The mana base is still very young and needs some work. Hasn't gotten around to it yet, as it's a fairly new deck, and he has had priority elsewhere till now. He says he's going to pick up cards such as Lightning Greaves, Concordant Crossroads, that kind of stuff later on. Now, budget for a single card or all upgrades. The budget is more time than money, as it is with most people. He'll acquire whatever card he feels like the deck needs. It's just a matter of how long it takes him to do so. He plans on getting OG Duels in Magic Fest Detroit, which is coming up next month, I do believe.
I think so.
Yep.
But he hasn't decided on which yet to get. He says that he's not really attached to too many of the cards except for Reconnaissance and a handful of Swing Make a Dude cards, as those are the heart and soul of the deck.
Okay. And I'll quick side note this. If Magic Fest Detroit was at a different time of the year, I'd be tempted to go.
Or just not in Detroit.
Or that doesn't necessarily help. But like you can get a pretty cheap flight to Detroit from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Except for I just don't want to go to Detroit in March.
I think I'd rather go to Detroit in the winter when everyone's huddled up in their houses than going out in the summer.
You feel safe.
Maybe, yeah, that's maybe. But yeah, I definitely just don't feel like traveling there in March. But otherwise, it's close enough. Maybe at some point in time we'll do Detroit because I know Jason Alta's always there, and I think Erin's going this year.
Erin's going this year.
She usually goes, so.
Oh, we don't want to play with her.
Wow.
Shots fired.
Oh, it is shots fired because next time I see her, I'm going to sit down and be like, challenge.
You're going to get dredged.
It's going to be awesome.
Okay, so let's take a look at this deck. Ghired's a really good deck, actually, for playing in a weird kind of diverse meta. He's a solid commander, but I think It's also pretty intuitive to new players. Just seeing you making big stompy tokens is something that they get, and it tends to be fun, and it doesn't feel that bad to lose to that like it does to some kind of a combo or watching somebody play Anjay Falcon Wrath and just kind of dirtle around for a 10-minute turn until they hit a World Gorger combo or something. Ghired's, I think, an effective commander, but it's also one that I think is pretty friendly to newer players to play against. So I think it's a good deck for that kind of a meta. One thing I'm trying to do in the show, too, is we always try to address the weaknesses, but like we usually don't highlight when we're talking about them on the show. So I think we should try to point out, this is one of the things that will help with your draw issue or whatever. That's just kind of a note for us to try to do, just to draw attention to the things we're talking about that will address those little things. First things first, I'll read Ghired for you guys out there. 2 and Naya, so 2 red, green, white for a legendary creature, human shaman. He's a 2/5, and when Ghired Conclave Exile enters the battlefield, create a 4/4 green rhino creature token that has trample. And whenever Ghired attacks, populate. That token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So populate means you just create a copy of a token that's already in play. If you don't have any tokens in play, you have nothing to populate. It doesn't make you a token out of thin air. You have to have one in play to copy. Luckily, Ghired makes you one when he comes into play, so that kind of addresses that a little bit. Land-based to start with. There's 36 lands. You want to take a look at those, Max?
Yeah, so there's Ash Barrens, Battlefield Forge, Canopy Vista, Cinderglade, Clifftop Retreat, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, 5 forests, 5 mountains, 5 plains. There's Hanweir Battlements, Carplucin Forest, a Rootbound Crag, Sacred Foundry, Scattered Groves, Sheltered Thicket, Stomping Ground, Sunpetal Grove, Survivor's Encampment, Tectonic Edge, Temple Garden, and then the 3 Scry lands, so Temple of Abandon, Plenty, and Triumph.
All right. What are your thoughts on the mana base, gentlemen?
I wanted 3 more lands in this deck.
You think I should have 39?
Yes, for one reason. We haven't gotten artifacts yet, but there's no real mana rocks in this deck. It's more focused on other cards.
There aren't a ton of mana rocks in the deck, and there's not that much land ramp from land sources. So particularly for a 5-color commander that's 3 colors, 36 does feel a little lean. I tend to agree, given how the rest of the deck is built. I can see running this deck with 36 lands, but as it's constructed right now, that feels risky.
Yes.
Also, not a ton of draw. So like you're not going to draw into that 4th land as easily as you would in some decks. What do you think of that, Max?
I do agree it needs more lands if we're not going to add mana rocks or more like sorcery speed ramp. I don't know if I'd go all the way to 39 though. 38 seems safe.
37, 38.
39.
39.
Okay, 39, Chris. You can win.
It's technically going to be 38 with a couple of lands I want to put in here.
Okay. So any ones that you don't like here, first of all?
Ash Barrens.
Really? I like Ash Barrens.
Ugh.
It's a cheap way to get whatever land you need to fix your colors. It's a better Termwork Expanse, basically.
So it's 1 mana to cycle it.
Yep.
Or you could just play Field of Ruin and just blow something up and get a basic anyways.
Yeah. It replaces itself.
True. Yep. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would probably
do both.
Run both. Replace Tectonic Edge with Field of Ruin and keep Ash Barrens on as a way to fix colors anyway. But that's a good call on Field of Ruin. I never thought of it as like purely a fixing land, but you do ramp 2 other players, but still, you're going to deal with like a trouble land too. You're going to also take care of someone's Ancient Tomb or their Nykthos or whatever. Yeah, no, that's not a bad idea. What about you, Max?
It's 3 colors, so something like City of Brass or Mana Confluence would be great in this deck.
Although Mana Confluence is now
$1 bajillion.
Yeah, $25, something dumb like that. City of Brass has gone up too because Mana Confluence has gone up.
Yep.
City of Brass has got drug up to like $7 or $8 now, I think. So yeah, those aren't cheap.
So I want to see a Field of the Dead in this deck.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Swap out a couple of the basics. I suggested 2 of each for snow covereds.
To make it easier.
Yep.
Yeah, good call. And this is a perfect deck for it because you're populating doing token stuff.
Yep.
So why not make more tokens just for free for doing nothing but showing up, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's a free way of doing it. I was also thinking of Reflecting Pool. Due to the amount of duels that are in here, it could help you smooth out the mana.
Especially with the pain lands, because it'll be able to create those colors.
Yeah. I think Survivor's Encampment's a good pull for something like that, too. It's a fine card, but I don't think in a 3-color deck, I don't think you need to have to spend a creature to make colored mana.
Yeah, if I'm going to be tapping my creatures, I want it to do more than just make me a colored mana.
So Survivor Encampment is one that I don't necessarily love, and I would probably replace here.
I have 3 other ones that I was thinking of.
Okay.
Hall of the Bandit Lord. to
So
give
you can
haste.
swing with Ghired right away. Yep.
Rogue's Passage, so you can swing indiscriminately
Because you want
with him.
You want to populate.
Yes. Not have to worry about, okay, everyone's got like a
Yeah.
6-power blocker or something stupid to stop him.
His populate trigger is on attack. It's not on damage.
Yes, but you still someone
do
can
want him
block
to
you, kill
survive.
him, or
Yeah,
anything
okay.
like that. Yep.
I would also throw a little bit of graveyard hate in there. We always say scavenger grounds, but you should run scavenger grounds just to get just one more option that lets you solve problems. And again, I've said it before, but like scavenger grounds will win you games sometimes.
It will.
Or at least keep somebody else from winning a game. I would dare say there are definitely more weeks where I use it than there are weeks when I don't. I'm regularly popping scavenger grounds in games. It makes a difference. And it's a free slot. It doesn't take up another card either. You can kind of afford to put in a deck. And this is there's a lot of colored mana in this mana base. I think you could afford to add a couple utility lands like that, like Road's Passage or that,
Yeah.
for sure.
I wouldn't mind seeing the canopy lands like Horizon Canopy, the red-white one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think that I don't mind temples if it's a one of in a deck. I don't love 3 of them in a deck. The Theros temples.
Yes.
Especially in a 3-color deck. Like
Yeah.
that's going to help speed this up a little more, taking those out, replace them
Yeah.
with the Horizon lands or even the Battle Bond lands.
Yeah.
The 2 of those you could run.
And maybe those are the slots he mentioned he's going to get ABUR duels at some
Yep.
point. Although, to be honest, I run duels in decks. You do, Max. You do, Chris. They don't make that much of a difference. It's almost like
It's a luxury.
It's a foil. Almost like it's a bling item for the most part.
And honestly, in this deck, without the type of ramp that goes and gets them,
Right,
they aren't
right,
a necessity. It's just another duel
No,
versus
good point.
you could just run Spire Garden from Battle Bond
Yep.
because you don't really have a fetch land in here to go get it anyways.
Right. Yeah, that's what makes those strong is you can get them off of Nature's Lore or off a fetch land untapped. And if you're not doing a bunch of that, then that makes the Battle Bond lands, which are great to begin with, just that much closer to a duel.
Yep. I wouldn't mind seeing he's got 1, 2 of them, I do believe, of the cycling duels. I wouldn't mind seeing the filters
Sure.
instead. It creates the extra, if I need double red for something, or
do
if I
that.
need double white or whatever
The
else.
filters are not cheap. Like they dropped a little bit when they got that reprint in, was it 25, M25?
Yes.
But they've crept back up, I think, to almost $25 for some of them. I would say to just briefly look back at the dual land thing. In this deck, I was going to go buy a Savannah. I think if you wanted to make the deck bigger for roughly the same price, you could buy a Gaia's Cradle.
Mm-hmm.
That would actually be like an absolute bomb in this deck sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that might like power the deck out of the group you're playing in, but like for that kind of money.
But he wants to be able to go to the big boy
Sure.
table with this one too.
Sure. So like for that kind of money, I think as far as investments go in the power of your deck, a Gaia's Cradle is going to do a lot more for this deck than a couple duels will.
So since we just talked about lands, can we jump over to sorceries?
Yeah. What do you got to say? Well, the sorceries, Max.
So there are 9 of them.
Okay.
There's Blasphemous Act, Farseek, Finale of Glory, Harmonize, Hour of Reckoning, Martial Coup, Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, and Shamanic Revelation.
Okay.
The reason I wanted to jump to sorceries is because Chris brought up Field of the Dead.
Yes.
I put Field of the Dead in my Grum Gully deck.
Okay. Only a 2-color deck, too.
Only a 2-color deck, but I'm running
How'd it
Snows. Well, when I was playtesting it at the shop, I had all these sorcery speed ramp cards. I'm like, none of these go get Field of the Dead. I literally walked up to the shop owner. I'm like, I need a Sylvan Scrying. And that's exactly what I would replace Rampant Growth with, is Sylvan Scrying. Same mana cost, but you can get those important lands like
Any
Field of the
land.
Dead.
Yep.
Sure. Or your Gaia's Cradle, should you add
Yes.
that
Yep.
later on down the road. Or your Scavenger Grounds to deal with somebody who has a graveyard going
Right.
out of control.
That would be not changing a lot, adding more sorcery ramp, but just changing those 2 cards out, if you add Field of the Dead, would make that perfect then.
Okay. Sure. So
I like the rest of them that are in there. I'm not a fan of the X spells.
So the main one in here, we have Finale of Glory, which is create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance.
Yep. See, that's the thing I'm looking at is it's like if X is 10 or more. Well, if we don't change things, like add in some mana rocks, other stuff, the ability to get to 12 mana is a lot to get the 4/4 angels out of it.
You bet.
Otherwise, you're just getting a bunch of 2/2 soldiers that could just be chump blocked or killed off in late game.
And soldiers in small tokens generally aren't what you want to be copying with With Ghired, you want to be populating big, huge
Yep.
beater things. You don't necessarily want to like add a second soldier. Not that that's bad or anything, but it's not nearly as good as it would be to copy some other giant smashy thing.
Yep. And I like Martial Coup. You know, you can create the soldiers, whatever, X5 or more, destroy all creatures, all other creatures. Well, that's kind of hard because you're going to destroy all your other tokens that you made, or you're going to destroy your commander or other stuff like that, which actually sets you back in the long run, in my opinion.
Right. One I would like, maybe even just in that slot, it's I think it might have even came with this precon, is Hate Mirage. It's a sorcery for 3 and a red. Choose up to 2 target creatures you don't control. For each of those creatures, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste and exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Because you can then populate those tokens with Ghired and keep the populated copy.
Yep.
So I think that most of the time is going to be more useful. And then, next turn you can populate again. Like you can do that multiple times. I think that would be a much better use of that sorcery slot, I think, in this particular deck than is the X-Spell for sure.
The other thing I was thinking about was Seasons Past. We always suggest it in green decks.
Some kind
at
of
least
recursion.
one card of recursion. The ability to do it it's huge late game.
Yeah. Is there any? There's not a ton of sorcery speed draw you're looking at in green. You've got things like
That
Soul's
helps this deck
Majesty.
anyways.
Yeah, and particularly because your commander's only a 2/5
I mean, Shamanic Revelation
is really good.
is already in the deck. Look at that.
I mean, the first one I would add, and it's already here.
And then what? Collective Unconscious is the other one without Ferocious.
Yep, and that's I think also
6 mana.
6 mana, yeah, and then, it's the worst version of Shamanic Revelation.
Yep, you already have your Harmonized. I mean, I had a real tough time of figuring out good card draw for the deck that didn't really rely too much, because all the really good green stuff is all draw equal to greatest power.
Yeah,
and majority of the cards in this deck are like 3 power, 4 power maybe at the most.
Yeah, it's a little bit more go wide than it is go tall with tokens, which is not usually what you see in this kind of deck. So how about Planeswalkers? We have 5 of them, Chris. You want to read those to us?
Yes, I can read these Planeswalkers. We have Domri, Anarchabolus, Domri, Chaosbringer, Freylease, Llanowar's Fury, Garruk, Primal Hunter, and Gideon, Blackblade. I personally, I'm going to throw my vote out here right now. I'm not a fan of Gideon Blackblade.
In this particular deck, I am not necessarily a fan of him either.
I can think of one Gideon immediately that I think would up the power level of this deck, and that's Gideon, Ally of Zendikar.
Because he makes tokens.
He can still attack like this Gideon does, and he creates an emblem.
Giving all your creatures.
That gives all your creatures +1/+1.
Sure.
So, I mean, his 3 modes do everything that you are reliant on in a token-type themed deck.
If it was me, I probably am only running Primal Hunter. I think Primal Hunter is a good card in this deck. All the abilities on it interact with what you want to be doing. The +1 creates a 3/3 green beast. 3/3 isn't amazing, but still 3/3, and you can do it every turn, and that's going to get out of control, and I think that's good enough. -3 draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. It's a draw thing, which this deck wants. -6 create 6/6 green worms equal to the number of lands you control. Again, bunch of big beater tokens, which this deck wants. I would definitely keep that. I don't know if it wants any of the other 4 Planeswalkers.
I like Domri, Anarchabolus for its static ability of giving all your creatures +1/+0.
Yeah, if you're going to go wide, but I think there's less vulnerable ways to do that maybe.
For sure. I kind of am in both of these boats. I actually don't like any of these.
Okay.
Planeswalkers, I can understand why you would keep Primal Hunter, but when I think token deck, I go right to Elspeth Sun's Champion.
Yeah, because it makes 3 of them.
It's making you 3 things. Granted, they're 1/1s.
Sure.
But you're making 3 of them.
Yeah.
And you might be able to populate one if it's your only target. It's a board wipe. And if you do get that alt off, you win the game.
Sure. Talking about Domri giving your creatures +1/+0 as a static, I'm like, man, Heraldic Banner gives them +1/+0, and it's a mana rock, which this deck doesn't need a ton of, and it's much tougher to remove.
There are also a bunch of enchantments that do that, like Intangible Virtue, which is cheaper.
Great with this deck.
And are you really going to destroy an Intangible Virtue that's giving all your tokens +1/+1 in Vigilance over killing a Planeswalker?
That's what's annoying about Intangible Virtue, is you don't ever want to, you can almost not justify removing it. And it's effective, but it feels terrible to blow a removal spell on it. So yeah, that would be another good inclusion here over in Enchantments, which I guess we can jump over and do next. There's 9 enchantments here. There's Aura Shards, Cryptolith Rite, Defensive Formation, Druid's Repository, Fanatical Devotion, Glare of Subdual, Mass Hysteria, Reconnaissance, and Rhythm of the Wild.
Defensive Formation's a weird card.
It's a good card. What are you talking about?
I've never seen it before. This is like my first time ever seeing it.
So rather than attacking the player, rather than the attacking player, you assign the combat damage of each creature attacking that you control. You can divide the combat damage as you choose among any of the creatures blocking it.
No, you assign damage of the stuff attacking you.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Rather than
Gotcha.
attacking player, you make the decision.
Yeah.
So you triple block with a bunch of 1/2s, and it's a 3/3, and you're like 1 damage here, and 1 damage here, and 1 damage here, and I kill yours. And
I don't know if it's a particularly good card, but I respect people running weird stuff like that in their decks that are like pet. That feels like a pet card to me, and I'm fine with that. I don't know if it's that good, but like I get it. I run plenty of goofy pet cards that aren't optimal too, so I'm on board with that. The one I don't love here is Mass Hysteria. That's a single red. All creatures have haste. It's basically the red version of Concordant Crossroads. And he mentioned Concordant Crossroads and wanting to get one too. I would not get Concordant Crossroads, and I would take this out.
Yeah.
Concordant Crossroads is for decks in mono green or, green, white, whatever. Decks where you have no other ways to give haste and you want to give a bunch of stuff haste. If you have other options, you do not want to give your opponent's creatures haste. And yes, it only costs 1 mana, so it's really efficient. But I would wager the amount of times giving your opponent's creatures haste, not just one opponent, 3 opponents most of the time, if not sometimes 4, giving all your opponents haste is not worth saving 1 or 2 mana over Fervor.
Yeah, especially when your commander needs to be attacking first off. So
Right.
if you drop this and you have Ghired out, who's already attacked once the previous turn, and a couple tokens, what else are you going to drop alongside this based on the list? And when we get to creatures, we'll talk about that are really going to impact needing that haste.
Right. And I like, haste is great.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't give it to everybody. Matter of fact, haste is so great, I wouldn't give it to everybody else. That's another reason not to give it away, because it's so good.
that's why they make a wonderful 3-mana enchantment called Fervor.
Exactly.
Or Hammer of Perforos if you have enough lands to sack and start making dudes.
Well, and then, so the next one we'll talk about here is a card that we like a lot, which is Rhythm of the Wild. However, the problem here is it says non-token creatures you control have Riot.
Yep.
So your tokens don't have haste, and this is a deck that makes a lot of tokens.
Right.
And yes, your spells can't be countered. Maybe that's enough. But I feel like his
Your
meta
creature
isn't probably...
spells? I think it's creature spells, not
Yeah.
just any
creature
spell.
spells. And there are only 13 creatures in this deck besides Ghired.
Yeah, and I feel like most semi-casual metas, you're not seeing that many. I mean, you're seeing counter spells, sure, but like not that many. It's a great card, but I think it's not a great card in a token deck.
So I believe that this deck is going to be harder into the enchantment than artifacts.
I 100% agree with
Token
that.
decks generally tend to be that way.
Because you get more value out of the enchantments than you do out of artifacts
Yeah.
for tokens. A couple of my suggestions are Goblin War Drums, which gives menace.
Yep.
War Cadence, which allows you to pay X, and then your opponents have to pay X to block.
Old Mercadian Masks enchantment, I believe.
So much fun.
That card is super cool. Yeah.
Well, it's good for a go-wise strategy,
Yeah.
especially with little things. Because then they're like, well, now I got to pay to block this one. So they're going to pay to block one thing, and the rest of it's usually going to get through.
And it's also the kind of card that's fun to play because everyone's like, what is that?
Yep. Another one I have is like Dictate of Heliod or any other Anthem type
Especially
enchantment.
Dictate, where it's +2/+2. That is fast.
With Flash.
Yeah.
So you can catch them off guard with the Flash. A couple other ones I had were for trying to sort out the draw a little bit is Sylvan Library. I know it's a little bit of an expensive card. If you don't want to go that route, you could go Miri's Guile, which still gives you like a Scry 3 at the beginning.
And that addresses some of the draw problems he
Yep,
had as
because
well.
you can get down. Another one I have, which is really interesting, is Overwhelming Instinct. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you get to draw a card. It is a green enchantment.
Oh, sure.
Another one, since he was big into like Mass Hysteria, Concordant Crossroads, maybe he likes the aspect of everybody having something. You can play called Duity or something. I don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Beep.
Yeah, right. Fecundity, I believe.
Fecundity.
I
Okay.
believe.
Whenever any creature dies, its controller draws a card. Now, the reason that I'm suggesting this one, usually we don't suggest cards like this, is the fact that you have such small creatures.
Right.
More than likely, they're going to die compared to your opponent's creatures, so you're going to gain more advantage over your opponents getting the advantage.
Yeah.
And then the final big one I have is a 5-mana enchantment
Oh,
called Divine Visitation.
there it is.
There we go.
And this should just be added to this deck immediately.
sure.
I mean, the populate, I attack with a 1/1, I populate this. Oh my gosh, now it's a 4/4?
With flying.
And
Yes.
Vigilance.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
a great one.
that's really good.
the big one I think that's missing, I already kind of brought up Intangible Virtue, but Growing Rights of Itlamok,
Yeah,
there aren't a lot of creatures for that ETB ability, but you should easily be able to play that and flip it all in the same turn in
Yes.
this deck. And that's going to that'll help contribute if you do keep some of these X spells in the deck.
I think this is a good deck for Furious Rise. That's a new enchantment that was in Eldraine. 2 in a red. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play until end of turn. Until the end of your next turn. And actually, not even that. Technically, it says you may play that card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. So if some reason Furious Rise goes away, you just have forever to play it because it doesn't go away till you do it again, and so that stays there for you. And what do you know? Your commander makes a 4/4 creature.
Yeah.
And you have other things that make beaters in here too. I think that would be a good way to solve kind of his draw issue a little bit or address it. Outpost Siege is just always good in decks. It's kind of the closest red is going to get to a Phyrexian Arena. And the last one, Beastmaster Ascension, if you are looking to win games, Beastmaster Ascension just gives you a way to win a game.
Yep, especially since he said that he was pulling away from the doubling season route and stuff like that.
So can we talk about that? What are your guys' thoughts on pulling away from the doubling season and like the Parallel Lives route for a token deck?
See, this deck is completely different. And I started out my notes by going into, well, this is what we should be doing with this deck. Create a stable foundation, then go off that. He doesn't want that. He wants to make the straight up aggro and attack and attack and attack.
And that's probably the mass hysteria why that's in there.
Yep.
I still think it's not worth it. I think it's still too dangerous, but I get not running doubling season because it's basically, it doesn't do anything right away. It's wait a full turn usually. Although I guess Ghired making a populate token then copies that right away.
Yep.
I'd still be really tempted to run both of those. I think even an aggro strategy, they're pretty good.
I might pull away from doubling season itself, but probably run Parallel Lives and Anointed Procession so then you can say this is a dedicated token instead of, someone sees doubling season and immediately they're going to turn on you.
Well, I also get, though, the logic that it's a Ghired deck and everyone's going to immediately assume that there's Parallel Lives and Anointed Procession and doubling season. And I get not wanting to do that just to shake things up. So that's a logical reason to not run them as well.
Okay. I mean,
if you're looking at a strictly power level, I think the deck is better off with all three of them.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of with what you originally were planning is let's build that foundation, change the deck up enough to where you can put some early game threats on the board, whether they're 1/1s or 2/2s, and then build up to like, okay, now is the time to play doubling season and make that extra populate. And
the way that I did this to set up a foundation, I went into the creature base and tweaked that a little bit.
Okay.
To give him the foundation there, and then the rest of it I left as is, so he still gets all the cool, weird shenanigans that he wanted to do.
That all said, one final enchantment that will definitely help the draw issue would be Elemental Bond.
Oh, yeah. Another
creature
good
with
one.
3 power or greater enters the battlefield, draw a card. 10 of the 13 creatures in this list are power 3 or greater, plus your commander makes a 4/4.
Yeah, there was a couple of them that I looked at, and it was like, if a non-token creature enters the battlefield, I'm like, oh, no!
And that's what I just checked. I wanted to make sure it was any creature.
Let's take a look at the artifacts in this deck.
There are 12 artifacts, a big old dozen. You go down to the store, you buy your eggs, you get them in the dozen.
You bet.
Or like you're in Wisconsin, so you go down and buy your favorite beverage, and it comes in a dozen.
How long are eggs good for?
That's a good question. I'm gonna post this to our listeners. Does anyone know how long good eggs are for? I mean, I've asked many people.
We've asked like an entire gas station,
and no one could give me a straight answer.
I've never had them survive that long in my fridge for it to.
Supposedly, the best way to do it is you put them in like a bowl of water or something, and however they float or turn or whatever.
Okay.
That's how it is. So, anyways, on to our baker's dozen of stuff here. We have Captain's Claws, Helm of the Host, Idol of Oblivion, Mirage Mirror, Parhelion 2, Sigiled Sword of Valeran. I don't even know what card that is.
Correct.
Skull Clamp, Soul Ring, Sword of the Animus, Talisman of Conviction, Talisman of Impulse, and Talisman of Unity.
Well, they're your mana rocks, folks.
A couple of them.
Yes.
Basically, those last 4.
Yep. So my suggestion in here too was on my notes. If you want to keep it land light, I would definitely throw in the 3 signets in.
Yes.
Actually, take that back. The 4 signets, because the Arcane Signet as well. Just to give you a little bit more of a nice mana curve, smoothing things out.
And if you're going to play aggro, that's going to help you play aggro.
Yes.
And especially because I think there's some room here to take things out. I don't think Captain's Claws, yes, it makes you a 1/1 soldier. I don't think it's still worth it. You have to equip it to a creature that's attacking, and I think it's fine, and I don't think it's good enough. And I think same thing, Sigil Sword of the Veteran is fine, and I think you would be happier just ramping.
But it fits his theme of what
It
he
does.
wants. He
It
wants
completely
to,
does.
whenever a
No-
creature attacks, he wants to spit out another one that's attacking.
That's true, and that's true. I get
Yep.
that.
I agree. Like that's what his goal is. The issue I think my issue with all that is the fact that there's enough cards in this deck that care about whenever a creature or X creatures you control attack do a thing.
Right.
Those that come in tapped and attacking don't trigger any of
No,
those
they do
cards.
not.
Yeah.
So that's where you got to find your balance.
Yep.
I do agree with you with the Sigiled Sword because it is an intense amount of mana
Yeah.
in it. The Captain's Claw is a little bit cheaper. It's only 3 mana, 2 to cast, 1 to equip. So you kind of get around that a little bit, so it's a little bit more aggro-ish.
I will read Idol of Oblivion briefly. It's 2 mana, and you can tap it to draw a card. Activate this ability only if you created a token this turn. And then you can spend 8 and tap it and sacrifice it to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token, which is great to copy with your populate ability.
Yep.
I had that. I played Ghired in the pre-release in Vegas last year and won the pot, and it was a really effective deck. Idol was a fantastic card in that deck, so I'm glad to see that's still in this list. It
And
was
even
really,
if you
really
don't,
good.
even if you don't ever sack it, the
Yeah.
ability to just
I
I
didn't
attack, I
want to
populate, tap, draw a card.
I never wanted to sack it. I was like, man, I could make an Eldrazi, or I can just draw a card every
Yes,
single turn
that is
because I'm
so good.
populating. It was so useful.
So here's a card that doesn't make a token, but it has to do with having a bunch of creatures. And I actually got to see this card in Austin, and that's Mace of the Valiant. It's 2 and a white for
Is
an
that the flash one?
Nope, it's so equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant and has vigilance. And then whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on it, and it's 3 to equip. So it's 6 mana total, but it's one of those things where you can play that on turn 3 and just play Gearhead, attack. It gets two counters, and you can build that up, and your opponents kind of forget about it because it just sits
Sure.
there. And then when you're ready to alpha strike with something, you equip it. Now it's a 12/12 because you've populated 6 times over the last 5
Yep,
turns. You've
that's true.
added a bunch of other creatures to the board, and whatever you equip it to has vigilance, so you don't have to worry about it being able to not block next turn.
Yep. The one that I was thinking about for equipment base, and it doesn't quite play into token theme or anything like that, like creating stuff, but since you're playing so many creatures, would be Embercleave.
Oh yeah.
The ability +1/+1, double strike. I mean, and you can cast it for 2 mana with flash and auto equip it.
Sure.
That's huge.
And if you really wanted to, like, one of the things that I had thought about doing with Jared at one point in time was to make this into my extra combat steps deck. Because he makes a token when he swings,
Yep.
you could really lean into that sub-theme, but that would require him making a whole ton of changes. But you could do that with this deck too if you wanted to. I see what you're saying with the on-attack abilities. That does work good.
Yep. Just so personally, with my opinion, I would actually, if I were to do this deck, for me, I'd cut a lot of these artifacts down and move more heavy into enchantments. More
Yeah.
permanent base. Don't rely so much on putting mana into it to equip it. It's still going to do something for me just
It's-
statically sitting there.
You could just ignore it. It's just going to sit
Yep.
there. Yeah, I kind of.
If someone wants to remove it, they can remove it, whatever. Like I would keep like the Skull Clamp, and I get rid of the Soul Ring because it's the worst card in Magic. Keep the Sword of the Animist, all that fun
Dibs
stuff.
on your copy from Command
Right,
Fest,
right,
from
exactly.
Magic Fest Minneapolis
Exactly.
this summer.
You know what? I would be willing to trade that for an alpha or beta one any day, all day.
I bet you would.
Wouldn't even hesitate.
I think all of us probably would.
How generous of you, Chris.
I don't even care if it's damaged. Just give me the black border, old school art like that.
You love the old school art.
Yep,
I
with
agree with that.
the brown card, how artifacts are supposed to be, not this gray silver stuff now.
All right, there's 15 instants here. We've got Beast Within, Benefactor's Draft, Chaos Warp, Court of Calling, Generous Gift, Heroic Intervention, March of the Multitudes, Path to Exile, Rootborn Defenses, Settled Wreckage, Swords to Plowshares, Teferi's Protection, Unbreakable Formation, White Sun Zenith, and Wrap in Vigor.
I absolutely love the protection package that's floating in this
Yes,
deck.
he's got a bunch of stuff to give us stuff indestructible to survive board wipes.
Yep, I'm surprised not to see a Boros Charm, but
Yeah.
that's
Oh, that's good. That's a good
neither
point.
here or there because there are a lot of them already in
Yes.
here. Personally, I don't like the X spells yet again.
Okay.
That's just so much mana to pump in it. You don't really get anything out of it right away type of deal. You're not like Court of Calling is more meant for combo base in my opinion, or big
Yeah.
nasty beaters, which you have none of.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the creatures that are in this deck, I feel like you just always go and get Elish Norn.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Elish Norn is one that jumps out at me like that's your target.
So that's 10 mana.
Yeah.
Now, I personally put within my notes that since I wanted to change this to more of a enchantment heavy, I'd run the tutors. Your Enlightened Tutor, your Idyllic Tutor, especially seeing how Idyllic Tutor got a reprint.
Yeah, price is much cheaper now.
To tutor up your cards that are really going to make a difference, your Fervor, anything else like that you need.
One card I want to see in here that I think is just useful in general, but it synergizes well with this deck is Arachnogenesis. Surprise Spiders!
Surprise Spiders!
A great card, although I think it's up there. It's closing in on, I want to say, almost $10 now.
Yeah.
Well, it's because of that new spider, which I'm going to suggest in creatures as
It
well.
Also it just popped up on Command Zone, too. Like, they all did a thing where it's like
their favorite cards.
It was somebody's pick, and a bunch of stuff spiked that was on the Command Zone because that's just how people roll now.
And that's like the meme that I posted on Facebook just recently. Came out of my memories is whenever I'm playing a Magic game, I make sure to use Yu-Gi-Oh quotes just to tell people, you have activated my trap card!
One thing that would definitely help with the draw or just help win the game would be Return of the Wild Speaker here.
Yes.
I mean, even if you're just drawing 4 off that Rhino token,
Yep.
you're still drawing 4 cards for 5 mana.
At instant speed.
At instant speed, or you're giving all your non-humans, which are pretty much everything in this deck, +3/+3.
Basically everything but your commander is not a human.
I think this is going to be the first deck that I'm not going to suggest any of the red card draw because I just don't think it fits this deck the way that it wants to be played.
There's no graveyard interaction. You don't want to
Yes.
don't want to have to be looting stuff or anything along those lines. So yeah, no, I tend to agree with that as well.
But I love the instant package minus the X cards.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he does have a couple of ways to deal with, Generous Gift, Beast Within, solve any problem. Chaos Warp does as well. So
Yep, and then there's Path. So
yeah, there's most stuff I would run here as well. And that looks pretty good there. I like the protection packages a lot as well. That's a good point, Chris. I like that a lot. There's 4 or 5 different ways to save his board against someone else's board wipe.
Which also leads me into the next subject then. If you're playing that many, why not up your board wipes then? Play Wrath of God, play Day of Judgment.
Sure.
So it's, say, Wrath of God and Wrath of God and Heroic Intervention. That's 6 mana right there to protect everything yours. Well, if you're casting any of your other big ones like Martial Coup or anything, you're pumping 6 to 7 mana into it anyways. Why not do it that route but save everything you have?
Yeah.
And just set everyone else back.
Yeah, I can see that. Anything else here for instance?
No.
Well, let's look at the critters. There's 13 of them, Max.
13 critters. So we got Bramaz, King of Ereskos, Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite, Handweir Garrison, that awesome combo. Hero of Bladehold, Judith Ojanen of Afara, Leonin War Leader, Miri Weatherlight Duelist, Nakata War Pride, Odric Master Tactician, Quasali Slingers, Sakura Tribe Elder, Silverwing Squadron, and Sky Knight Vanguard. So a lot of those cats remaining from the original iteration of this deck.
So this is where I came down to where I wanted to build kind of a foundation type of deal.
Okay.
And a few of these, yes, they have the attack clause where they pump out a dude, but I'd like to see like a Milecloth or a Verdant Force in here that can just sit there and spit tokens out every turn that you don't have to worry about so much.
Tendershoot Dryad.
Yep.
Another
Anything
one
like that. The other one that I am super surprised we're not in here, it's 2 of them because they're almost identical, is Legion Warboss and Goblin Rabblemaster. You are forced to attack with those goblins right away when they come out, and they just spit them out for free for you every turn.
There's a couple other good, like Wingmate Rock that makes its partner on attack. Flame Rush Rider, when it attacks, it can make a copy of itself tapped and attacking. I thought there'd be maybe a few more of those in here that do interact with that, on attack ability, but I think we're seeing a lot of the leftover cat stuff that's still in here as well.
And like I said, it's still baby phases, so but I mean, these little cards that could be changed.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're easy to get your hands on. It wouldn't be so much of an issue. Like my favorite card in the entire deck is the Lone and War Leader.
Yeah, Leonin War Leader is
4/4 for 4 that spits out 2 1/1s with lifelink. It's like,
one of my all-time favorite cards from the last few years.
No Godsire in here, and again, it doesn't do it on attack, but it's okay.
Isn't that the combo?
It's 8. No, it's the 8 mana one.
But I think there's a way to combo and you just make infinite of them with this deck. Wasn't that like the big thing when this deck came out? Is Godsire?
Maybe I don't remember.
Maybe it was like Atla Palani or something. One of the cards from that deck goes infinite with Godsire.
Because it's a vigilant 8/8, and when you tap it, you put an 8/8 beast creature until you're gonna play. That's those colors. So you can attack with it and still tap it to make and then populate that token. Yeah, it's an absolute monster in this deck. but it doesn't do it on attack, so I guess I kind of understand that as well. But that's one a lot of people saw. You also have things like Udvari Hellkite that makes a dragon when it attacks.
Yep.
Which sticks around and you populate it, and so that kind of fits that theme as well. But again, it's 8 mana. Maybe it's a little bit more than what he wants to be doing because he, like you said, he's leaning much more into the go wide theme than we were. One of my favorite creatures, just in Magic in general, and I'm glad to see it in here, is Nakato Warpride. It must be blocked by exactly one creature if able, and whenever it attacks, create X tokens that are copies of Nakato Warpride that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of creatures, and then you exile those anything in the next step. So you populate one of those, and then next turn, both your original Nakato Warpride and that one make the copies of all of them, which you would then populate one of those. That gets out of control if you don't deal with it. So I'm so glad to see that card here in this deck.
And that's why there's no doubling season and other stuff in
Sure,
there.
I get it. Because he doesn't want to do the math. Like, I'm not running double season because the math is too confusing on Nakato Warpride.
There has been quite a few times when I play, I think it's Cathar's Crusade, where you get all the counters or whatever.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I look at my hand, I'm like, I passed the turn. I don't even care if I lose now. Right. I know I would win, but I don't want to do the math.
Well, we didn't mention it for enchantments, but Cathar's Crusade would be a perfectly fine card in this deck.
Yes.
Annoying
Yeah.
for everybody involved, but like it would be good.
See, I tried not to go too hard into the staples that would be in the tokens type of deal.
Yep, I agree.
Because we could have suggested like Mirari's Wake and all that kind of stuff
There's
too.
a gazillion ones that are like you see in all these decks all the time, and I do like that it's a little bit offbeat for sure.
I definitely think this is where you got to decide, do you want to make a bunch of little things?
Yes.
Like you're kind of doing with your foundation, Chris?
Yep.
Or do you want to kind of delay your win and make big things with like World Spine Worm? When it dies, make three worm tokens. And there's also Giant Adaphage for 7 mana that when it hits a player, put a token that's a copy of it onto the battlefield. So then you can populate that token. Then that's also now making a 7/7 when it hits. So it's just an army in a can that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you could play, was that Rings of Brighthearth that copies the trigger?
Yeah.
Yep.
That would be good. Although I guess, is that a triggered ability or an activated ability?
It's a trigger that you hit.
Yep. So yeah, that would be really useful too.
What's the one that you run in Brago that doubles your...
Strionic is activated.
Yep. That's activated, okay.
So Rings is triggered. There's also one more that copies triggered abilities that's not broken like Rings, and I forgot what it is.
Because I think you have to tap it.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But I mean, the ability to double your populate would be huge.
Yes.
I started going in the populate strategy too with this, and I'm like, oh, there's so many of them, but you only get one. You don't get to copy like multiples.
Right.
And
right.
Like, I do believe there is a guild mage though, one of the Selesnias that does populate.
Yes.
Which could be an idea to sink mana into later.
Especially if you wind up with flipping over the Growing Rights or picking up the guy's cradle for it.
Yep.
I do agree. We probably should have mentioned that earlier, but I do agree with what you said, Max. You do probably need to pick between whether you're going to go wide or go tall. And I think the deck wants you to go tall, and I think we made some go tall suggestions, but I do like the fact that he's kind of intentionally making it not do that.
Right.
That's just one more reason, though, why Doubling Season's great, because it's that much better in a go wide deck when it's copying multiple tokens versus just one big one.
Now, I do believe there's that Naya Rhino that whenever a creature attacks an opponent, they get +2/+0.
Yes, Max had that.
It's Gihiji.
Yep.
That could be a suggestion for this deck too. Something. Yes, he doesn't do anything with tokens, but he helps your tokens out.
Buffs your stuff.
And it actually helps you in the long run because your opponents they'll still be attacking each other, and their creatures are going to get buffed attacking the other person too.
Just make sure nobody fracture identities it and gives everybody else one.
Too confusing.
And Chris, that guild mage you're thinking of was Vitu Ghazi guild mage.
Okay.
For 2 green-white you can populate.
Yep.
All right. So any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
I like this deck, and I like the way that he took it.
I do too, and I feel like I maybe offered him more suggestions than I intended to change it to go tall, and I didn't mean to do that. I do like the fact that he's intentionally fighting against the way most people build it. I respect that for sure. Ghired's a fun commander, and I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see the original build of it. So thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you everyone supporting us on Patreon. It does mean a lot. It makes a big deal. Keeps the lights on. Keeps the show functioning. So thank you, everybody, for supporting us, both with your dollars and with your ears. It does mean a lot, and we appreciate it. Okay, that will wrap things up. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.